At the most significant moment, I, Austin Weston, and my wife Arlene were both 33 years old. We were married for 11 years and had two daughters, Justine, 8, and Sybil, 6. Arlene and I are both a little prettier, taller, smarter, and more athletic than average, but not geniuses, actors, or models. Our libido is also a little higher than normal, and we have had a very good sex life, although not off the charts. Arlene was a corporate attorney who specialized in contract negotiations, but also knew about wills, trusts, and probate. I was and continue to be the vice president of purchasing, including IT equipment, for a small publicly traded company. My sister Jen, her husband Bill, and their two twin daughters, Kate and Beth, 7, live about 4 miles away by road, 1 mile as the crow flies, because there is a large park and preserve that you have to go around to get to. Get to them. Our children and their cousins are best friends and go to the same school. Although I didn't really know Bill before he started dating Jen and married her 6 months later, he became my best friend. One of Arlene's quirks was her approach to finances and saving money. She insisted on investing in jewelry and art. Gold and platinum jewelry and art are investments that can be enjoyed while they last, was her usual refrain. While I invested a little in the stock market, most of our savings were invested in jewelry, both for her and for me, and artwork in the form of paintings and a few sculptures. We also encouraged relatives to give our children gifts of jewelry and art, and also gave them gifts such as big gifts for birthdays and Christmas. Of course, also with toys, games, books, and/or clothes. Due to the significant value of our jewelry and art assets, we had a complex security system. It included electrically powered sensors for each of our 12 or so most valuable paintings and 2 of our most valuable sculptures. We also had a safe on the bedroom floor, and we each had a locked desk. Arlene had the only key to her desk, I had the only key to mine, and Arlene had the key to the safe with the only other one in our bank safe. To ensure continuous operation of our sensors and security system, we had a generator backup and also a battery backup, double redundancy. Bill took after us in some ways, but in a slightly different direction. He had high-definition cameras covering the only 3 entrances to his house and a security system, although it was less sophisticated than ours. Another quirk that Arlene exhibited, perhaps due to her semi-specialization in wills, trusts, and probate, was adding expensive jewelry and art to our wills soon after purchasing them. All men's jewelry was added to my will, with the recipient rotating between our daughters Justine and Sybil, if Arlene died before me, and vice versa, with Arlene for women's jewelry. For works of art, we alternated between ourselves which of us would bequeath them in our wills, again alternating between Justine and Sybil. This had the effect of separating out some of our assets, both mine and hers, since you cannot bequeath something that is not fully yours. Life went on as usual, as far as I was concerned, until one Thursday evening. When I returned home from work, Arlene was there, but the children were not there. We had a candlelit dinner, and Arlene was in a seductive outfit and kissed me passionately when I walked through the door. "Where are Justine and Sybil?" I asked naively. "Jen and Bill were so kind to take them to school tonight and tomorrow. You should have seen how happy they were when I told them they were having a sleepover at Kate and Beth's house," Arlene replied with a devilish smile. "What are we going to do without them?" I said playfully, holding Arlene close to me and kissing her passionately. "We'll figure something out," she replied. After a delicious, flirty, and light dinner, we turned on some CDs and started dancing. We basically practiced the slow dance steps we learned at the weekend dance classes in our house, without shoes, for about an hour. Once Arlene started rubbing herself against me on the dance floor, it was the end of the dancing. I carried her upstairs, she undressed me seductively, I casually undressed her, and we fell into bed. Our sex was much better than before, and this was largely due to Arlene. We soon fell asleep, but Arlene didn't finish. She woke me up in the middle of the night, starting the second round again. I knew Arlene and thought, damn, what does this mean? More over-the-top sex in the future, or she wants something. With this last thought, I fell asleep for the second time. The next morning, Friday, Arlene was all love and affection, and I allowed myself to believe that the only thing that meant the fantastic sex we had was that our sex life had reached a new level from very good to excellent, and more phenomenal sex awaits us. My carefree demeanor and wide grin, which had caught the attention of some of my colleagues at work on Friday, changed early in the afternoon when the phone rang. "Austin, this is Arlena," my secretary said through the intercom. "Hello, sex goddess," I started the conversation. "Hey, on his own, Eros," Arlene laughed. "Hey, I'm not Greek," I laughed in response. "No, but you sure are a god of lust and sex," she giggled. We continued to exchange compliments, which led to a small conversation and then to the nature of her call. "Listen, dear," sounded in the receiver from her beautiful lips, a harbinger of impending trouble. "Some people from the office are going out to eat and drink tonight as part of a team-building event suggested by the morale consultant. I told you about that our corporation recently hired. Do you mind picking up the kids from daycare and having dinner tonight?" "You're not even coming home?" I burst out with pure disappointment in my voice. "Of course I'll need to change, but I won't have time to pick them up and cook dinner. We have to meet at the restaurant at 6:30. Oh, please be kind. I don't want to be the only one in our group who won't go," she purred. Irritated, I asked, "Why such short notice?" "I guess it's part of the exercise, sacrificing for the team. You know, I'd much rather be with you and the kids, but I feel like I have to do this," she continued, purring even more. What could I say at that moment? After the best sex of my life, she knew damn well that I couldn't be an asshole and say no. I resigned myself to the inevitable. "Of course, honey. We can kiss you goodbye, right?" I asked sweetly. "As long as you don't try to drag me into bed, Eros," she giggled. We said goodbye. I sat dumbfounded at my desk. She'd never gone out with the boys from work before. As far as I know, she really didn't like most of them, and I don't remember her ever inviting any of her colleagues to our home. I also don't remember her ever telling me about the team-building consultant. This smelled like a huge lie. My sunny mood and grin disappeared. I picked up the kids, made them their favorite mac and cheese dish, though I made them eat salad too, and we saw Arlene off. We couldn't really kiss her. "Don't ruin my makeup or wrinkle my dress," she giggled, giving us all little kisses on the cheek. "This dress doesn't look like team-building wear," I muttered to myself, "unless the exercise is to make sex happen." When Arlene returned home that night, I noticed the time, 1:02 a.m. Hardly dinner and a few drinks. I pretended to be asleep to avoid confrontation. She climbed into bed with, as far as I could tell and confirmed the next morning, some kind of medium-sized negligee and spooned me. There was no sex on Saturday night, but on Sunday and Tuesday night, we had regular sex for us. I liked it less and less as the next 2 Thursdays and Fridays I received the same treatment. Well, it wasn't that I didn't enjoy fantastic Thursday night sex. It was more that was what it meant. Another team-building event on Friday evening. After the second Friday night, she returned home at 1:22 a.m., the third time at 1:51. On the fourth Friday night, I couldn't stand it. When Arlene dressed in a tight outfit that I had never seen before, I was blunt. "Arlene, I really don't like it when you go out on a Friday night. Darling, I have already explained the need to you several times," she said as she adjusted her dress to her hips, peering into the mirror. "Sorry, but I can't believe you're coming home at 11:30, a time she'd lied about coming back the previous 3 times. "After dinner and a few drinks, I'm very suspicious and it's killing me." "Austin," she said sternly, "you have no right not to trust me. We have been married 11 years for God's sake, and we have 2 children. What do you think I'm doing selling myself?" "I don't know, but what I do know is that this all smells like a lie," I replied. The conversation became increasingly tense. Finally, after she gave the kids the obligatory kiss on the cheek, I said as she walked out the door, "I'm begging you. No, I'm begging you for the sake of our marriage not to go." "Austin," she said irritably, "I can't cancel now. I'll be the laughingstock of the company. We'll talk tomorrow, and I'll put all your concerns to rest. Or even tonight if you wait." "So you think I'll just get over it?" I asked in an angry voice. "Honey, you know if we break up, I'll get the kids, the house, and alimony. You don't want to ruin your life over unfounded suspicions, do you?" she asked with a defiant look on her face. "You're the one who's ruining the marriage," I snapped. Looking irritated, she said, "We'll talk tonight, even if I have to wake you up." "We won't be able to talk tonight because I won't be here when you get back in the wee hours of the morning," I snapped. "The kids and I are spending the night at Jen and Bill's. I wish you a good life," I said sharply and closed the door. I didn't slam the door, but I didn't close it softly either. Through the one-way mirror in our front door, I saw Arlene, ashen-faced, begin to reach for the doorknob, but then she shrugged and walked out to her car parked in the driveway. As soon as Arlene's car was out of sight, I called out to the girls, "Let's go to Aunt Jen's for the night while Mom is at a meeting." They were ready in about 2 minutes, and we got into my car parked outside. I had already arranged a sleepover with Jen and Bill, and they knew something was up. Jen because of female intuition, Bill because I briefly and very superficially discussed the situation with him. He's a smart guy and could figure out a lot of things himself. After the girls were asleep, or at least calmed down, I went out to the car at 11 p.m. to get a bottle of pills and returned to the house at 11:02 p.m. The car was parked where there was a clear view of the security camera at the front door, which recorded the time and date. At about 3:30 a.m., my cell phone woke me up. "Hello?" I answered sleepily, looking at the alarm clock next to the bed in the guest room, which showed 3:29. "Austin, where are you?" A voice shouted into the phone in hysterics. "It must be Arlene," I thought to myself. "I'm at Jen's like I told you. Why the hell are you calling me at 3:30 in the morning?" I answered irritably. "Austin, we had a theft," Arlene cried. "All our valuable paintings and jewelry have been stolen." Turning on the recording app on my iPhone, I asked her to repeat herself, and then asked, "Why didn't you call me as soon as you found out?" "I called," she cried hysterically. "I just got here 15 minutes ago. The house was completely dark, and I had to navigate with a flashlight." "What the hell were you doing coming home from a team-building event at 4:15 in the morning? How exactly did you contact him or her?" I asked sarcastically, trying to be as angry as possible. "Well, time, just somehow got away from me. We can talk about this later. You need to come home." Her emotional train has now completely derailed. Jesus fucking Christ. "Okay, I'll be there as soon as possible. Let me get dressed," I muttered. I went to the bathroom, got dressed, went out to the car, and drove home in 10 or 12 minutes. Arlene's makeup was smeared all over her face, dissolved by copious amounts of tears when she met me at the front door, flashlight beating in her hand. She started to come up to me with open arms and say something, but I pushed her away with my outstretched hand and abruptly interrupted. "Have you checked the circuit breaker, team builder?" "No, I don't know where he is," she cried. "Get out of the way," I shouted as I quickly walked past her, lighting the way with my flashlight. As I walked past her, I asked, "Did you call 911? "No," she answered, uncertainty. "So what are you waiting for?" I barked. I saw her take her cell phone out of her purse as I walked past her. I went down to the basement and found the main circuit breaker in the off position. I also found the generator backup switch in the off position, and the battery backup disconnected. The telephone line to which the security system was connected to communicate with the outside world was disconnected. I turned the switches to the on position and connected the battery and phone line. Everything worked perfectly as alarms sounded for the theft of several pieces of art. I turned off the security system by pressing the code on the console by the front door. I answered the call from security, gave the password, and reported that it was a false alarm. I started looking around the first and second floors while Arlene disappeared into a puddle of tears on the living room couch. Meet the police at the door when they arrive and come to your senses, I shouted at her with real anger in my voice. Indeed, not only were all of Arlene's and mine's jewelry and art stolen, except for one really heavy granite sculpture, but so were the children's valuables. Even the safe in the bedroom floor was open and empty. When the police arrived, I gave them my statement first, while the policewoman tried to calm Arlene. I told one of the male police officers about my wife's call to me, what she told me on the phone, and what was missing. I provided a list of all our valuables from my office. Meanwhile, 2 other male police officers searched the house in case anyone else was there. I didn't even think about it. Arlene finally calmed down enough to give her statement to the policewoman. While she was doing this, I pulled aside the policeman I was talking to and whispered, "I really think you should check on my wife for this theft. She's the only one who has a key to the safe that was opened, except for one in our safe deposit box, which I'm sure you can confirm is still there. And we've been having marital problems. I wouldn't be surprised if you find something incriminating on her computer or in her locked desk." The policeman looked at me strangely, but wrote it down. "What problems?" he asked. "I believe she's been cheating on me with another guy for the last 4 Friday nights. I'll get the private investigator's report tomorrow. When I told her our marriage was in danger if she went out tonight, it was probably yesterday, Friday. She and I went anyway. I think she wants to leave me and doesn't want to share our wealth when she leaves," I said, as sincerely as possible. "Would she really do that with 2 kids?" he asked. "She would suggest that she could take the children with her," I replied. "She almost admitted it last night. I recorded it on my iPhone," I moaned. "Are you saying you'll get the private investigator's report tomorrow, Sunday?" he asked. "No, sorry. I keep thinking of it as Friday because I don't usually get woken up at 3:30 a.m. I'll get the report around noon, today, Saturday," I replied. "Can you bring me a copy to the station when you get it?" he asked. "Sure, I'll probably be there," I replied. "Great. Ask Officer Smithson. I'll brief the thief." After the police left, I returned to Jen's house without any conversation with Arlene. I didn't even respond to her cry of, "Where are you going?" when I walked out the door. After a nice breakfast at Jen's, where I told her and Bill all the details, I returned the kids home around 10 a.m. I told them that some of our items were temporarily missing, but I was confident that we would get them back. They were sad and cried when they saw that some of their favorite things were gone. Arlene, still looking terrible, and I tried to console the children. "I have a few things to do," I told them, "but I'll be back in 2 or 2.5 hours. Would you like to go to the park then?" I asked, smiling as widely as possible. It turned their tears into smiles. I received hugs from them, and as I prepared to leave, Arlene came up to me and asked, "Where are you going?" Looking at her coldly, I said, "Probably for evidence of your infidelity," and then quickly left without looking back. The photos of Arlene and her lover, Jack Traylor was his name, from the 2nd and 3rd Friday nights were exactly what I had imagined, although the exact location surprised me a little. The private investigator said he may have trouble getting photographs that are useful as evidence of them copulating if they only do it indoors. They were so stupid that they had sex on the terrace and in his pool, which was easily visible from many points where they could not expect privacy. His report also stated that they arrived at Traylor's house after dinner on Friday night and apparently left in Arlene's car a little before 11 p.m. The private investigator did not follow them, but they returned around 2:15 a.m., then she left alone around 3 a.m. I went to Kinko's, made 3 copies of everything except the DVD, then went to see Officer Smithson. I arrived there around 1:15. He immediately introduced me to Detective June Grayson, a burglary detective who was as beautiful as the policewoman on TV, one of the ones I didn't think existed in real life. She was not only beautiful, but also smart. After reviewing my evidence without my prompting, Grayson said, "It appears your wife and this Traylor guy were out of place at the time of your theft. Your security computer indicated that all systems were turned off at 11:05 p.m. To cover all the bases. Where were you then?" "I was at my sister's house," I replied casually. "Can anyone there confirm your alibi?" she asked. I don't think so, I replied. I think everyone was asleep, but you can ask them. Then I got a eureka look on my face and said, wait, I think Bill has CCTV, and at one point I went out to my car to get some forgotten pills. Maybe that will give you a timeline. Can we get the recording? Grayson asked. I laughed. I think Bill is high-tech. I'll bet it's a DVD, I said, taking out my cell phone and dialing Jen's house number. Bill answered, Say, Bill, do you have any CCTV footage of your house from last night? I laughed again at his answer. Would it be possible for you to bring the DVD? Sorry for offending you by asking about the tape. To Detective Grayson at the local precinct? I'll let her tell you why. When you drop this, I need to take the kids to the park. Thanks. I smiled at Grayson and Smithson. As I thought, it's high-tech and has a DVD. He said he'd bring it right away. Unless you have some other very important questions, I need to go take the kids to the park. Thank you, Mr. Weston, Grayson said with a smile, standing up to shake my hand. We will let you know in the coming days if anything else is needed. I'll be around, I said, smiling back and shaking her and Smithson's hands. I know you know what you're doing, but as I told Officer Smithson last night, you need access to Arlene's computer and her desk drawers. I would love it if you could get a warrant for this, and for my computer and desk. Two, to cover all bases. Grayson just smiled. I dropped off my original evidence, including the only copy of the DVD of Arlene and Traylor having sex, at my lawyer's office. He's always open on Saturdays. I just told him to put it in his safe for now. I brought the other 2 copies home. As soon as I arrived, I put one on my desk and left the other, without the Friday night report, on the coffee table in the living room. I took the kids to the park, and Arlene insisted on coming with us. She tried to talk to me when the kids were playing, but every time she did, I would just ignore her and go over to the kids to push them on the swing, start playing tag with them, or something similar. I made dinner that night and asked the kids to help, so I wouldn't have to be alone with Arlene. After dinner, I played games with them, read them bedtime stories, and finally had to leave them. When I came downstairs, Arlene was holding the envelope that I had left on the coffee table in her hands. She was white as a ghost. Austin, we really need to talk, she said, her voice shaking. For what? I asked, looking dramatically confused. Will our conversation make you stop having fun with Traylor? I grabbed my car keys and walked away as she screamed, You know, in our state there is no fault for divorce, and I will get the kids if you file for divorce. We can work this out. My only response was to give her the middle finger. When I returned 4 hours later, I went straight to the guest room, blocked the door with a chair leaning on the doorknob, and went to bed. Sunday was probably the most uncomfortable day of my life. It's very hard to ignore someone in the same room for several hours, but unless the kids were around, I didn't respond to anything she said. Sunday night, after the kids had gone to bed, I was watching TV when she approached me with an insurance claim form. I need you to sign this so I can fax it to the insurance company to reimburse our stolen property. I looked at it, took a pen and paper, wrote down the fax number and the insurance company department, then said the only words, without children around, that I had spoken to her all day. I will not sign this, and if you forge my signature, I will charge you in fraud. While Arlene was yelling at me, I continued to watch TV. When her screams became too loud, I took out my headphones, plugged them into the TV, and ignored her. She eventually left crying. I saw her go to the fax machine and send in the application form. After she went to bed, I wrote a letter and faxed it to the same address she sent the form to. My letter read, I do not have definitive proof at this time, but I suspect that my wife is responsible for the theft and loss that she reported to you on the report form earlier this evening. I am not filing any claims pending the completion of the police investigation, and if anyone produces a document with my signature before this point, rest assured that it is a fake. Call me on my cell phone, XXXXX, if you have any questions. At dinner Monday night, Detective Grayson and 4 other police officers showed up with a warrant. I sent the kids to finish dinner on our deck, telling them, The police just want your stuff back. They were happy about it, especially because I told them they could have a soft drink on the terrace, which we almost never allowed. When they found Arlene's desk drawers locked, Grayson asked us, "Who has the key to this?" "Only me," Arlene answered nervously. "I need you to open it," Grayson ordered. "Why?" Arlene asked. "Because the warrant says we can do it, and I don't want to ruin your furniture." Arlene went to her purse, took out her keys, and opened her drawers. The procedure was repeated for my table. Arlene panicked when they took her computer, while I remained calm when they took mine. She was hysterical when she saw them take the storage service envelope out of her desk. "What is it?" she screamed. "I've never seen this before." "I thought you had the only key," Grayson said emotionlessly. "I have it. Someone must have picked the lock." "Easy to check. We'll take the box with the lock cylinder with us, and our technicians will evaluate it," Grayson answered calmly. Clearly, this was not the answer that Arlene expected, but that is exactly what had to happen. When the police left, Arlene was in a panic. "Why are they doing this? What does the warrant say?" She was in pain. I handed her the warrant and said, "Maybe they think the theft was an inside job." She looked shocked when I turned and walked out onto the terrace to join the children. Tuesday was a really bad day for Arlene. The only bright spot was taking the kids to school. At approximately 11 a.m., she was served divorce papers at work that included adultery. At 2 p.m., Detective Grayson and 2 other officers came to arrest her for theft and led her out of the office in handcuffs. On Tuesday morning, Detective Grayson called me asking me to come to a warehouse about 10 minutes from our home to identify our stolen property. It took me about 30 seconds to recognize it as ours. I then checked everything and found that, except for my Rolex watch and gold cufflinks, everything was there. Detective Grayson called me after the arrest to let me know what happened so I wouldn't be left in the dark and so I could pick up the kids. Arlene appeared before a magistrate late afternoon and was given a $50,000 bond. She called me. "Austin, I'm calling you from prison. Please don't hang up," Arlene begged. "I didn't know adultery was illegal." "Why are you in jail, Arlene?" I asked sarcastically, already knowing the answer. "They think I robbed our house. It's funny," she cried. "I don't think it's funny." "Didn't you do it because you were planning on leaving me?" I asked happily. No, this is absurd. We can talk about this later. Can you come and buy me out? If we both agree to use the house as collateral, I can be free in an hour. Please, Austin." "Why don't you call your lover Trailer? I'm sure he can help," I said tartly before hanging up as she started screaming, "No!" My lawyer filed for an emergency protective order on Wednesday morning while Arlene was still in jail. Either she didn't call Trailer or he didn't want to help. I didn't care. My lawyer asked the court to issue an order of protection, arguing that Arlene was accused of stealing my property and the children's property, so she should not be allowed into the house. The judge will not hear the case until Arlene is released on bail. Her parents apparently acted as guarantors, and she was released Thursday with instructions to immediately go to family court for a protective order hearing. Arlene's lawyer argued that she should be given the presumption of innocence on the theft charges, and that she never physically harmed family members or even threatened to do so. My lawyer argued that 2 of my most expensive pieces of jewelry were missing, suggesting that she may have stolen other items. The judge's decision seemed to divide the children into 2 parts. We do have to give the benefit of the doubt. However, Mr. Weston still has the right to feel that his property is safe. Therefore, Mrs. Weston can return to the matrimonial home during divorce proceedings. However, she cannot return until Saturday. Meanwhile, Mr. Weston may change the lock in any room of the house with a new one, the key to which Mrs. Weston will not have, and she is prohibited from ever entering that room. Notify the court of the room by Monday. Is there anything else? I pushed my lawyer to make an additional condition. Your Honor, my client would like to ensure that Mr. Trailer, with whom Mrs. Weston is having an affair, is excluded from entering the Weston home or having any contact with the Weston children until the divorce proceedings are completed, he said. I'm not bringing him there or with the kids, Arlene screamed, suddenly standing up from her chair, embarrassing her lawyer and the judge. Mrs. Weston has agreed that she will not, so that should satisfy you, Mr. Weston, the judge said. I wanted to scream, I can't believe a word this lying bitch says, but luckily I restrained myself. I had Lois install a new door for the master bedroom and reinforced the surrounding frame. I also installed a complex lock in it that was almost impossible to break into. I moved all of Arlene's things into the guest room. Arlene did return home on Saturday morning. The children were happy to see her. I mostly ignored her, except when it was necessary to care for the children, so as to upset them as little as possible. Arlene wanted to talk. I told her, Sunday night after the kids go to bed. We spoke in the living room with the door closed, so that if voices were raised, it would not wake the children. After several awkward minutes of silence, I said, Arlene, you wanted to talk. Talk. Austin, I can't help but think you're behind this theft. She started before I cut her off. Stop! The first thing I wanted to hear out of your mouth was, I'm so sorry for cheating on you, Austin, and how I hurt you so much and ruined our marriage. But apparently you don't feel that way, do you? I said sarcastically. Austin, when you've calmed down, we can talk about rekindling our love and calling off the divorce, but first, I need to resolve my legal issues. Arlene, let me explain this so that even someone as selfish and narcissistic as you can understand. No talk about divorce. I'm divorcing you, pure and simple. It's over between us, I said as decisively as possible. But, Austin, she began to plead. I interrupted her again. This conversation will only be productive if you listen and accept my proposal, I said, even more decisively. Are you ready to listen? She nodded. I will change the grounds of divorce to irreconcilable differences. I will receive sole custody of the children, but you will have unlimited visitation rights, alternating major holidays and 2 weeks in the summer, provided you do not expose them to other men, unless you will not marry him. Our assets will be divided equally. You will pay child support for 1 child and pay half the mortgage on the house. Once Sybil reaches 19, we will sell the house and split the proceeds. There will be no child support, I said, piercing her gaze. But, she started again, and I interrupted her again. I'm not done yet. If you agree to this, I'll go to the DA and ask him to charge you with a misdemeanor without jail time if you plead not guilty, no contest. That way you can keep your lawyer's license and your job. Agree? I concluded. But I didn't do anything, she said, crying and wringing her hands. I know that you orchestrated this whole thing to get back at me. I don't want a divorce, but if there is one, I will never agree to you getting sole custody. She sobbed through tears. So you're not going to take responsibility for anything, breaking up a marriage or stealing, huh? I asked, raising my voice as I stood up. And you don't even feel an ounce of remorse, do you? As if I should be happy to be your cuckold. God, how could I ever marry you? I moaned. As she covered her face with her hands, I said, Accept this offer, Arlene. If you don't, you will be ruined. As I was leaving, she screamed, But if you would just listen to me, I would explain everything. You should listen. At least that's what I think she said, but before she finished, I had already closed the living room door and couldn't be sure. 2 days later, when I returned home, the children were gone, but Arlene and Jack Traylor were sitting in my living room. What the hell is he doing here? I yelled at Arlene. You told the court you wouldn't bring him here. Austin, you need to listen to what we both have to say. After you listen, he'll leave and never see you again, she whined. Get out of here, Traylor, I yelled. He stood up with a hybrid, dissatisfied and pleading look. He was about 3 inches taller and 30 pounds heavier than me, but the old saying that it's not the size of the dog in the fight, but the size of the fight in the dog meant something to me. I have never shied away from confrontation in my life, even if it cost me a lot, and this will be no exception. Traylor tried to tell me something as he slowly approached, but I didn't hear his words because he continued, repeating out loud, Get out of here! After I repeated my call a good 24 times, it became clear that he wasn't going to comply, so I walked over to the phone and picked up the receiver to call 911. He yanked the phone cord out of the wall and said irritably, "Could you just listen, damn it?" I took out my cell phone and started dialing 911. He grabbed it from my hands and threw it on the floor, smashing it, and said, "This will only take 2 minutes and give you your life back." I turned to go out the garage door, through the kitchen. He grabbed me by the jacket, but I twisted out of it and ran to the garage. Apparently, he didn't see me pick up the meat pounder from the kitchen counter. As I turned left and walked out of the kitchen into the small passage toward the garage, I stopped abruptly and turned around. As soon as he made the same turn into the transition, I hit him in the forehead with the hammer, sending him back to the kitchen sink. As he screamed, holding his hands to his head, trying to stop the bleeding, I hit him once in the groin as hard as I could. Now Arlene stood in the kitchen, sobbing. I saw her purse on the kitchen counter, took out her cell phone and dialed 911. My emergency is that an intruder attacked me in my own home and I hit him in the forehead with a hammer. He needs an ambulance and I need the police to arrest him. I opened the front door and sat quietly at the kitchen table while Arlene tended to Trailer. The paramedics impressed me. They arrived in less than 5 minutes. The police arrived a minute after them. Trailer was taken away in handcuffs in an ambulance. The police believed my story. I asked them to take my broken cell phone to check my fingerprints to confirm my story, as well as a phone line if they needed it. Also, my jacket was torn in the process, and I asked them to take it as evidence. All Arlene could tell the police, which she repeated over and over again through her tears, was, "We just wanted to talk to him." The next day, my lawyer was back in court. The judge was furious and ordered Arlene to leave the house within 2 days and pay for replacement locks. Meetings with her children had to wait until the divorce proceedings were completed. The judge put the divorce on hold until the criminal case against Arlene is completed. I talked Detective Grayson into getting a search warrant for Trailer's car and house, as well as Arlene's car. In Trailer's car, they found my gold cufflinks, and in the trunk of Arlene's car, they found a gift with Jack written on it and a heart on the label. The gift was my Rolex watch. Trailer was also arrested for theft in connection with the cufflinks, and because fingerprint results from my home showed that the only prints on the basement windowsill through which the thief entered our home were his. Arlene did not take my advice and did not accept my offer, but fought the criminal case. She seemed to believe, correctly as it turned out, that the only way to get custody of her children was to win a criminal trial. The prosecution had an excellent case. The woman with the flashy emerald ring and the blonde, both Arlene's features, rented the storage unit where the stolen property was found shortly after Arlene's first company event. Only Arlene's fingerprints were found on the lock of the storage room. This, together with the previously discussed evidence, made a good direct case for the prosecution. Arlene and Trailer spoke in their own defense. Arlene admitted to having 4 sexual encounters with Trailer, but claimed she never left his house before 3 hours last Friday morning, so the private investigator's testimony was fabricated. She claimed that I must have stolen things and framed her. She couldn't explain how I could do this because she admitted that she didn't think I had the key to the safe or her desk, and she always had her keys with her. She explained the rental of the warehouse space as an accident. She said her fingerprints were placed on the lock. Both Trailer and Arlene came across as hostile and indifferent to the impact of her infidelity on her family. I was questioned by the defense lawyer for 3 hours. The prosecutor and Detective Grayson said, I did very well. They said I came across as strong but cooperative and very persuasive. After my interrogation, the prosecution called Detective Grayson to explain that I could not have committed the theft. She said that Jen and Bill's DVD showed me going in at 11:02 p.m., not getting out, and my car not leaving, while the break-in occurred, as indicated by the alarm going off, at 11:05 p.m. In a dozen tests, the fastest patrolman was able to get from Jen and Bill's house to my house at that time of night in 9 minutes and 32 seconds. Detective Grayson also testified that I did not have the key to the safe. The only 2 were the one in Arlene's purse and the one in the safe box. She testified that I had not visited the safe box for over 3 months prior to the first company event. The expert confirmed that the times on the DVD of Bill and my alarm were accurate. Once the case went to the jury, Arlene and Traylor felt things weren't going in their favor and tried to negotiate a misdemeanor deal with the prosecutor. Exactly what I suggested to Arlene. Arlene even agreed to give me sole custody of the children. The prosecutor asked my opinion. I told her, "You decide," but after she made us spend money on a lawsuit, if I were deciding, I would leave the decision to a jury. That's exactly what she did. The jury returned a verdict in less than 2 hours. They were found guilty on all counts, including theft and insurance fraud for Arlene and theft and assault for Traylor. Arlene was sentenced to 3 years in prison and 5 years probation, and the bar began disbarment proceedings because she had been convicted of a felony. Because Traylor had 2 previous misdemeanor convictions, and because the attack on me was a special circumstance, because it happened in my home, he received a 4-year prison sentence and 5 years of probation, and was also required to pay restitution for my cell phone and jacket. After the criminal trial, divorce became an obvious formality. All of Arlene's requests, through her lawyer since she was in prison, were denied. The marriage was dissolved on the grounds of adultery. I got full custody of the children, paid 3 years' worth of child support, and more when Arlene got out of jail, and a house. The rest of our assets, before Arlene's criminal defense costs, were divided equally. She was ordered to pay my legal costs. When I walked out of court with my brother-in-law and best friend Bill, he was smiling from ear to ear. "What kind of satisfied smile is that?" I asked. "How you did it, Austin? You can tell me now." He expected an answer. "Did what?" I laughed. "What I didn't tell Bill, but will tell you, is that, of course, I orchestrated this whole theft. I was very suspicious of the team-building event the first time I heard about it. I confirmed that this was a lie by asking a colleague to call HR at Arlene's office. If HR didn't know anything, I concluded it was a hoax. On the first Friday of the team-building event, I'd already hired a high school girl as a nanny. She came as soon as Arlene left. I paid her $50 to babysit, and $100 to keep quiet about her being the babysitter that night. Arlene's cell phone was emitting a signal that the app on my smartphone could detect, and I made sure it was working before she left that Friday night. As soon as the nanny arrived, I tracked Arlene using this app. I found her and a guy I'd never seen before in a restaurant I'd never even heard of. I entered the restaurant in disguise, walked up to the dishwasher boy and gave him $100 to bring me the glass Arlene drank from. I waited until Arlene and her lover left the restaurant. I saw them kissing before she got into his car. Still in disguise, I walked behind the car and took a photo of the license plate with my cell phone. By Monday afternoon, I had learned that Arlene's date was Jack Traylor and where he lived. I hired a private detective to follow Arlene on the 2nd and 3rd Fridays, and that's when he took photos of them having sex by his pool. I told the private investigator that I didn't want his report, so I could claim that I had no evidence until that day, until the day after her 4th Friday team-building event. I had a plan in place, including how to get custody of the kids if we divorced, by Sunday night. That first Monday before I left for work, I pulled Arlene's signature emerald ring out of her jewelry box. She never wore it to work, but she always wore it when she went out. I paid an actress who was the same size as Arlene and who wore a wig the same color and style as Arlene, and put an emerald ring on her finger to rent a storage unit in Arlene's name, paying cash for 3 months in advance. By Tuesday, I bought clay for impressions of the keys. While Arlene slept that night, I quietly took her keys from her purse and made impressions of the keys to the home safe and desk. The next day, I came home early from work and, using an alloy of fusible metal that melts quickly and then hardens, I made copies of these keys. Wearing gloves, I laid out the new lock that night and asked Arlene if she had seen it or the key to it before. She picked them both up, examined them, and said, "No, I don't think so." "Why?" "If you don't need it, I want to use it to lock my toolbox, okay?" I answered. "Of course," she replied and left. I put the lock in a plastic bag, hoping her fingerprints would be on it and the key. 2 days before the theft, I marked obstacles along the path through the woods between my house and Jen and Bill's house with reflectors. The night before the theft, I opened her desk drawer and placed in it an envelope from the storage area with the code to the front door and a key with her fingerprints on it. I asked the same actress who rented the space for me to rent a van with a motorcycle rack on the back, and I asked her boyfriend to rent me a dirt bike. I parked the motorcycle in the bushes behind Jen and Bill's house. I also obtained Arlene's laptop password from the password list in her locked desk, created a new email address, and left a draft email in an account purporting to be for Jack Traylor. The letter said that she couldn't wait to meet him, and if their plan worked, they could live off the stolen property until she got a divorce. I paid the actress and her boyfriend to be on call on the fourth Friday of the team building event to come out to the side of Traylor's house and use Arlene's extra car key to drive away in it. Before doing this, I asked the guy to unlock Traylor's car with the emergency lock tool and leave my gold cufflinks between the door and the passenger seat. I also placed a wrapped gift with Jack on the label and my Rolex watch inside in the trunk of Arlene's car. Earlier that day, I parked the rental van in my garage and turned off the automatic garage lift. 2 days before the theft, I left Traylor's fingerprints from a glass in a restaurant on a basement windowsill that allowed access. I found that it was much easier than I expected. Instructions online. Cocoa powder, a flat bowl, and a small brush were all I needed. Plus, a little patience. Looks like I did it well enough to fool the police. Until my conversation with Arlene, begging her not to go out on the fourth Friday, I had not decided whether to actually go through with it. I truly believed that if she had stayed home that night and ended her relationship with Traylor, we would have had at least a 50% chance of saving our marriage. When she not only went, but made a remark to me that she would get the children if I tried to get a divorce, my love for her instantly evaporated, and I put the plan into action. The only help Bill provided, without knowing it, was that in the weeks leading up to the theft, he answered my questions about the only part of his house that wasn't on cameras, namely about a specific basement window with fake metal bars. By the time I returned to Bill's house from my car at 11:02 p.m., I had already opened the hidden basement window. I quickly exited through it, got to the dirt bike, drove through the woods at over 40 mph, knowing that the reflectors would warn me of obstacles, and made it to the basement window of my house, which I had previously cut off power to and on, which I left Traylor's fingerprints. Using gloves for everything, I first pulled out the phone line, then disconnected the battery, then turned off the backup generator, and then turned off the main power breaker. I used the key I made from Arlene's key to open the safe, since I knew where everything was and the van was in the garage. Despite working in the dark, I got everything out in less than an hour. I went to the storage room, loaded everything in, and put Arlene's fingerprint lock on the latch. It only took a little over an hour. I returned the van to the rental place and left it in the parking lot, throwing the keys in the key box. I hailed a taxi and asked him to drop me off a block from my house. I rode the dirt bike back to Bill's house, collecting reflectors along the way. I hid the motorcycle in the bushes and climbed back into his house through the same window to which I had attached fake metal bars. Having Traylor come to my house and do what he did was an unexpected bonus. I never found out what motivated Arlene to have an affair with Traylor or anything else about it. I think if I had ever listened to them when they were so eager to talk to me, I would have known. However, once she rejected me when I gave her one last chance, I didn't really care. I got my revenge. Now let them live with it. Subscribe to our channel so that your second chaff doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think about listening to the next one.